There's the old adage, I think, I don't remember who said it. I think it was Bresson. It doesn't matter. Said that, films are made 3 times, in the writing and the production and the post.
Yeah.
And I really see that. It evolves. I had a good filmmaking friend of mine once tell me that if you can even get 70% of your vision into your film, that's a huge achievement because you never get 100.
Welcome to Media in the Mix, the only podcast produced and hosted by the School of Communication at American University. Join us as we create a safe space to explore topics and communication at the intersection of social justice, tech, innovation, and pop culture.
Welcome back to Media in the Mix. I'm your host, Grace Ibrahim, and today we have a very special guest, Jamie Sisley. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me, y'all. Appreciate it.
Of course. We're excited to finally sit down and talk to you. I know SOC has heard a lot about you, your projects, and things going on, so I can't wait to deep dive today. But I'm just going to throw it to you real quick. Just a little intro about yourself, kind of your background, and then really what brought you to first the area and then also SOC.
Sure. Well, you're probably going to have to edit this down. Apologies in advance. I'll try to be, sort of concise. I grew up in the area. That's really where it all started.
Okay.
Grew up sort of central in Northern Virginia. So I know this area very well.
Awesome.
Went to UVA for undergrad, studied business, which is kind of weird.
Interesting.
For film. But it served me super well over the years. That brought me into music management. I managed bands for about 6 years out of undergrad. So worked at a company called Red Light Management. Really lucky that I was able to get that job.
Yeah.
And worked with groups like the Dave Matthews Band or Tim McGraw and Faith Hill. And
that's amazing.
And just had some incredible mentors that really taught me about the business of entertainment, which has served me really well with film. Started to make a documentary while I was there called Farewell Ferris Wheel. And I was super lucky to get a grant from ITVS, which is a really good grant organization. And that was enough for me to think maybe I should go to film school. So I went to Columbia, studied screenwriting and directing, made a short film. That short called Stay Awake ended up doing well enough where that sort of, got enough interest where I could focus on a feature version of that.
Yeah.
I did that. So I made Farewell Ferris Wheel, Stay Awake. And then during COVID, when I was living out in Los Angeles, decided to come back here for a myriad of reasons. This being the big opportunity. I was really excited to get this opportunity to teach. It's always been something I've wanted to do. It's a chance for me to come back home, be near my family, be near my friends. And I've always felt like this community, the DC, Northern Virginia area, is really creative, but sometimes I don't feel like it gets that sort of notoriety. So I'm glad to be back here, and in any small way I can sort of help bolster that sort of reputation.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I actually want to ask a little bit about studying business, and how did that translate into kind of the film space, and what do you feel like you took from that helped you? Yeah,
great question. I realized undergrad that when I got out, I really needed to work. I was in a place where I definitely needed to have a paycheck.
Yeah.
And so business seemed sort of like my backhand.
Yeah.
Like the creative arts were sort of something that I was really interested in, that I gravitated towards.
Yeah.
But I had no idea how to put together a budget or how to, calculate the weighted average capital of a company or any of that crazy stuff. I think what it really helped with is it gave me confidence. It allowed me to be a good public speaker.
Yeah.
It gave me ability to understand budgets, understand money, and how business and creative. I think a lot of people don't like talking about them both, or they're scared of talking about the business of entertainment.
Right.
I think business school taught me that it's actually really helpful to talk about them in conjunction with each other.
Yeah.
And the more you know about the business side of entertainment, the more empowered you are as a filmmaker. If you need to cut budget when you're in the middle of production, you know how to read those things, and you know what to cross off. So it actually gives you more creative control to have that ability. And I also think your creative collaborators trust you more. They allow you to be a part of that. which has served me well as well. So
That's
yeah, no,
awesome.
and you can write grants is the
Yeah.
other thing. I think
True. Yeah.
I don't think I would have probably gotten the grants I got
Yeah.
initially had it not been for my ability to write business plans,
That's really cool.
which I hated doing in school, but it ended up really helping me out.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people avoid numbers in film. They're like, I don't want to talk about that. I'll leave that to that, department or whatever. But you're right. It's like when you know that knowledge, you can get ahead of it yourself. So
Yeah, I hate math.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of math, but I'm really glad that I forced myself to learn
Yeah.
it. Because now I feel like there have been so many times, Grace, where
Yeah.
I've been in pitches or I've spoken with producers, and I can kind of see when someone's not being upfront with me or our team.
I bet.
And
Yeah.
I attribute all of that to my business background.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And how is managing music bands? Like those are a lot of like big names you threw out. That's so fun. I'm sure also there's a wide variety of emotion that you probably went through.
Oh
going
yeah,
through that.
it was amazing. I mean, the people that I worked with most closely were the other managers,
Mm-hmm.
and that was to this day they were my very best mentors. They just really
awesome.
taught me how to work with artists,
That's
and again how the business side of entertainment works, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of overlap between film and music.
Oh yeah. Okay. Can
Yeah.
you dive into that a little bit?
Sure. First off, a lot of the companies are the same from a rep standpoint, right? So
Interesting.
CAA, William
Right.
Morris, UTA.
It's all talent, I guess.
Yeah,
At the
yeah,
end of the day,
and those big agencies sort of cross over into both.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of do different things in both industries, but having kind of come up in music, I was sort of aware at least of the landscape. That was helpful.
That's cool.
How to talk with investors, how to
Yeah.
pitch.
Yeah.
Trying to think what else, and then how to read budgets. Really,
Right.
those are the big ones.
Right.
And just to not how to not be afraid of the business side. I encounter this a lot here at AU, where I think students come in really excited about the creative,
Yeah.
but they don't really want to talk about fundraising until they have to.
Right.
I do feel like those are important conversations to have.
That's awesome.
I think they end up making your project stronger if you don't avoid it, but really just face it head on.
Did you ever, do you remember the moment you felt like, oh, maybe film is for me, or this is something I want to pivot to? Like, was there something that happened, or?
Yeah, it's a great question. And when I was at Red Light as a band manager, I was really enjoying that process. And in the mentors I was with, I was learning a ton. But I was in my kind of mid-20s, and I started to realize there were a lot of issues sort of in my life when I was younger that I hadn't really thought about.
Yeah.
I was sort of blocked and didn't want to think about. A lot of stuff having to do with my mom, my family, addiction.
Gotcha.
And I realized I kind of had a voice about that. I wanted
Yeah.
to say something about it.
Yeah.
And I remember initially I thought maybe music would be the thing, and I was just awful. I was just the worst musician you could ever imagine. It was so embarrassing to even have tried.
You got to try though, right?
Look, I gave it the old college try,
Exactly.
but it did not work out.
Okay.
And then a lot of my family have sort of visual art backgrounds. And so I started
Okay.
to explore photography. I started
Yeah.
to explore writing.
Mm-hmm.
When I was living in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I went to Barnes & Noble and just bought a book on directing. And that's
nice.
literally how I started. And it's
Yeah.
funny, the guy who wrote that book ended up being one of my professors at Columbia.
No
Just
way.
Out of the blue. It was
Wow.
bizarre. But
Right.
that's kind of how I came into it. I
Yeah.
realized I had something I wanted to say about some issues that I cared a lot about. And film seemed like the right medium for me to sort of explore those issues.
That's amazing. On that, I kind of want to talk about Stay Awake, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So it is such, a personal and intimate story. And I know you went from short to then turning it into a longer feature.
Yeah.
What was that whole experience like? Just kind of, going through something that I'm sure you have a personal attachment to. Can you just shed light on kind of that experience?
Sure. Well, generally it was a great process. I mean, it was stressful and scary, but also really fulfilling. A lot of people say, write what you know, especially when you start.
Yeah.
And like I just mentioned, that issue, especially addiction, opioid addiction, pills, substance use disorder, those issues were really top of mind.
Yeah.
For me, it's literally the catalyst for why I wanted to get into film.
Okay.
So it just made sense that was going to be what I was going to start
Yeah.
with. The short far exceeded my expectations, if I can be real with you.
Yeah.
I really did it for myself. I didn't think anyone would care. Just being super honest. And then I got really lucky, got into Berlin, and Berlin's one of the big, it's top 3 film festival in the world. And when that happened, I got a lot of notoriety. And something that started to happen that was really interesting was after every screening, I would have a small line of people that would come up and want to talk to me about their aunt or their uncle or their mom or their dad and how they were suffering with a lot of the same issues. Because Stay Awake's really from the caretaker's point of view of addiction. And that's what's unique about it is it's sort of following these two young boys as they're trying to help their mom with her disease. And I didn't realize how much of a door that opened up for some people to feel more liberated and open to talk about that subject. And so when that happened, it became way more fulfilling. I had no idea that it would resonate with people that way. And it really sort of propelled me to want to make a feature version because I really had no intention to do it at the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what was directing like?
I love directing. It's I think it plays to a lot of the skills that I like trying to hone. Yeah. With leadership, with trying to bring the best out of people. Yeah. With collaborating with people as a team. I think some people think directing is dictating an artistic voice. And some people it is that. Yeah. But for me, I really love taking a group of friends that I love, trying to be clear with what I'd like to achieve with the story. Right. And then giving those people artistic liberty to sort of bring their skills and talents and strengths to a film. And it's magical. When it works, it's absolutely magical. Yeah.
And as a director, I know with, content like that, it's just a little more emotional and for some people it might be a little more real. As a director, how did you kind of create an environment where those like vulnerable performances could happen?
Well, I think a lot of that starts with casting. Yeah. You have to find people that want to go on that ride with you because some people, acting is a different skill for certain people. Yep. But I really try to find good humans who are also really good actors. Yeah. I lucked out both on the short and the feature. Just some really, really lovely people that I got to collaborate with. And then again, it's a collaboration. You build those characters. You write the characters in a script, but then you work on it together and they put flesh onto those characters and make them 3-dimensional. And so again, it's a beautiful thing to watch. Right.
Yeah. I'm just curious, did anything kind of change as the production process went on? Like as you brought these characters to life, did you pivot in any different directions?
Tons. Yeah.
Just so like people, don't think directing is like straight and narrow, but that you have that room to kind of pivot.
Yeah, I have so many things that I could mention. There's the old adage, I don't remember who said it. I think it was Bresson, doesn't matter. Said that, films are made 3 times, in the writing and the production and the post. Yeah. And I really see that. It evolves. Yeah. I had a good filmmaking friend of mine once tell me that if you can even get 70% of your vision into your film, that's a huge achievement because you never get 100. It just, it's an organic thing that sort of is living and all you can do is sort of help try to control it as best you can. But that's the way I like to work. I found that being a little loose sometimes can make for better work. Yeah. And if your collaborators feel empowered that they can sort of lend some of their skills to a project, I think it makes your project better. Yeah. There were so many times, especially with my younger actors, where they'd come up to me and be like, Ethan wouldn't say that. They'd challenge you. Yeah. And that's what you want. Yeah. It means they're engaged, right? They want this performance to work. Yeah. And they're challenging you. They're taking over that character and finding nuance in it in ways that you just can't as a sole writer.
That's amazing. Yeah, you had some awesome actors in that.
Thanks.
It's just awesome. Yeah, Chrissy Metz.
They're all Finn, Wyatt, Chrissy there, and a lot of the supporting cast too. Just really wonderful group of people.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, congratulations on all the success about that.
Thanks.
And then just kind of talking into the festival circuit arena.
Yeah.
Because we do like to talk about things that might help our students out if they're starting out in their careers. Or is there anything they should know about the festival circuit? And that could be the things that they might not know are very daunting about it, or anything you just want to shed light on there.
Sure, it's a great question. I guess the first thing I would say is not all festivals are created equal. You have to really be careful about putting together a festival plan. A lot of the times, and it's different for features and shorts,
Mm-hmm.
there's a kind of a different set of rules.
Okay.
But oftentimes you want to sort of shoot for the bigger festivals, the top tiers.
Okay.
You know, Cannes, Berlin, Venice, Sundance,
Right.
Telluride, Toronto, in some circles, South by and Tribeca for
Yeah.
sure. I would count them as top tier. You know, those are good ones to sort of aspire to for a couple of reasons. One, if you get into it, a lot of these other festivals will come to you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to spend as much money.
Right.
And they're also sort of career makers,
Yeah.
right? They're the kind of festivals that if you do get in, it'll sort of move the needle. Reps will start reaching out. Production
Okay.
companies will start reaching out.
Very cool.
You'll meet collaborators.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good approach.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm weary of just a blanket applying to tons of festivals.
Mm-hmm.
Both because some festivals have rules
Yeah.
about premieres, so you have to be careful.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Like if you premiere
Like
at
you
one
can't
place,
premiere at one place. Yeah, then
Yeah,
you can't apply to that.
which is why
festival.
sometimes it's better to start sort of at the top and then
Right.
work your way down.
Right.
But also there's just a lot of festivals that I've found they're not super helpful. But they still charge you to apply.
Yeah.
And so I always advise students to be wary of that. You have
Yeah.
to be kind of careful about what you're applying to because a lot of these festivals in screenplay competitions, they don't move the needle in the way that some of those other ones do.
Right.
On the flip side, though, there's a lot of really great regional film festivals. You know, if you're a part of a community, I think those are also really helpful to go to,
Right.
so that you know can be a part of that community and help grow it. And there's a lot of great ones around DC, Maryland, and Virginia.
That's awesome.
I mean, the Virginia Film Festival has been super helpful to me.
Yeah.
You know, it's helped grow me.
Of course, yeah.
And a lot of festivals do that. Like
Yeah.
Berlin's been that way for me. I've been really lucky where
That's awesome.
they've accepted 2 of my films.
Yeah.
So that's another way festivals can help, is they can kind of help be your advocate when you're starting out.
And when you say like create a festival plan, do you think about that as you're creating the feature, the short? Do you have that in the budget? Like, are you thinking that far ahead when you kind of start?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think one of the sometimes when producers are first starting out, they'll forget to put budget in for festivals,
Right.
not only submissions but also for travel.
Right.
Because
Right. Of course. Yeah. That makes sense.
yeah, I mean, a lot of the times for features,
Yeah.
they'll travel you out. The
Okay.
major ones will, but for shorts, a lot less. You know,
Yeah.
you usually have to sort of find your own way. So I always advise students to bake in some money for both.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's good advice. And then in terms of kind of the international recognition, so going to Berlin, did you feel like you were able to connect with the audience there too? Like, I know we were talking a little offline about how film is like a universal language sometimes. So can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's always been really humbling to me. That film sort of does transcend language in that
Yeah.
way. I've always surprised in a really nice way. Sometimes it doesn't, though. I remember when we did the premiere at Berlin for the feature, there was a really somber moment, and I remember like one person in the audience laughing, like it just didn't translate. Like
Didn't hit the way you thought it was.
no,
Yeah.
not in that audience. And
Yeah.
comedy especially, right, is so
Yeah.
cultural, and you know, it just differs from culture to culture.
I guess it's, art is like all about, art is subjective, right? So it's like
Totally.
same way, or someone might perceive it differently. Is it true that Farewell Ferris Wheel was made over a long period of time?
Yeah, like 90 years. Yeah,
Wow.
it was.
Was it 6? Was the
It was 6. Yeah.
Probably felt like 90, but
My directing partner on that, we co-directed the film and I produced it.
Yeah.
We thought it was going to be one summer.
Okay.
I remember this conversation. We were
Yeah.
at Starbucks here in DC, and we're like, you know what? This will just be a summer. We'll knock it out, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And 6 years later, we realized how difficult it is to
Yeah.
finance feature doc, especially a first one.
I guess leading up to the next question, how did that experience kind of shape your like patience and just perspective as a filmmaker?
Oh, you certainly develop patience. Yeah. I mean, I've gotten into cooking recently because I just love this idea that you can make something and then eat it. Like whatever you make is
Love
right in
that.
front of you,
Yep.
and it's immediate gratification.
Yes.
I think film's the exact opposite, where you really have to have a long-term vision.
Right.
I think films are made in pre-production
Yeah.
and in development. Once the train leaves the station in production, there's very little you can do to stop it for good or bad.
Right.
So,
Right.
and you need money for all of that. So we learned a ton. I think
Yeah.
that feature was a film school in and of itself for especially how to raise money, because it
Right.
takes a long time,
Right.
especially for grants.
Just in terms of that, what got you into that, that type of content, talking about immigration, all of that?
Yeah, great question. I was still working as a music manager, and
Okay.
I had no idea how to make a documentary. I'd never even
Yeah.
touched a camera.
Yeah.
That sounds braggy, but it's not.
No,
I just literally had no idea what I was
Yeah.
doing. And so I had a friend of mine, Miguel Martinez is his name, who I still work with to this day.
Oh, that's awesome.
We own a company together, but
Oh, that's cool.
we just started looking at different ideas that we were interested in. And
Yeah.
I grew up in the South, and carnivals were always something that, from a nostalgic standpoint,
Okay, that was going to be my next question.
were really
but you're
appealing to
answering.
me.
That's cool.
And I read an article in the Brownsville Herald in
Yeah.
Texas about this guy who was trying to bring, in a nutshell, most of the carnival workers in America come
Yeah.
from one single town in Mexico called
Right.
Tlapacoyan.
Okay.
And they come up every year, they work all the carnivals around the
Yeah.
country, and then they come back down and spend time with their families during the off season. And we just found that to be fascinating. We
Yeah.
thought that was a really interesting premise.
Yeah.
And these are legal workers.
Cool.
Nobody was illegal.
Right.
They're trying
Yeah.
to literally work within the confines of the legalities of
Yes.
America and its visa process. And we didn't have to look far for conflict or issues
Yeah.
or obstacles.
Mhm.
That there was just a lot there.
Yeah.
And the deeper we went into it, the more we realized there was a lot more to that story than we thought.
Right.
Much like a lot of documentaries, right?
Mhm.
You start with one thing, and then if you
Kinda
start
add
doing a
to
deep
it.
dive,
Yeah.
it's way more
Yeah.
complicated.
That's really cool. This might be like a very black and white question, but after having gone through those two experiences specifically, does documentary draw you more? Does narrative draw you more? Does fiction? Like, where are you drawn to one more than the other now? Or you're just kind of at the space where you're like, I'll do them all?
I think different stories call for different formats.
Oh,
That's sort of the way
interesting. Okay,
I
yeah.
think about it. I feel very lucky that I've had the opportunity to make a feature doc and a
Yeah.
fiction feature film. I try to keep that open
Yeah.
depending on what the story is, and then I start to think, would one of those formats lend itself better to that story?
Yeah. You just mentioned you and Miguel own a company together.
Mhm.
So can you talk about that a little more?
Yeah, I love when you get to meet somebody and you just get to grow with them. And Mig and I have been together as a filmmaking duo for since 2009.
Wow.
So it's we're both sort of we met each other in the area. It's actually a fun story. I was working at Red Light in music
Yeah.
management, and we got a call one day from this really irate guy
Yeah.
who was saying, "You guys don't program any Latino artists in Charlottesville."
Okay.
And he was the host of I think the only bilingual radio show in Central
Wow.
Virginia at the time.
Wow.
And he was taking us to task. He was like,
Yeah.
"Why?" And I said, "Well, let's have lunch. Let's
Yeah.
figure it out."
I love that.
You're right.
Yeah.
And that's how I met Miguel. And
awesome.
and so once I
Good
thought of
for
this idea for Ferris Wheel,
Yeah.
I came to him because I knew he made music videos.
Yeah.
Made that, and then we started this company, and
That's awesome.
we do a lot of commercial work around DC. A lot
Very
of stuff for like Events DC, the National Institute of Health,
yeah.
the Smithsonian.
Okay.
Just commercial work. It
Yeah.
was honestly a godsend during COVID. It was
Sure.
nice to have that sort of
Yeah.
sort of in the background, and I
Yeah.
dip back into it all the time. I really enjoy the work. I enjoy
Yeah.
working with Mig, and I enjoy working with people around DC. But one of the big projects over COVID
Mm-hmm.
that Miguel and I did for Astor, we were presented with this opportunity to sort of the Events DC came to us and were like, we have this wonderful access
Yeah.
to the embassy community and,
Mhm.
and specifically to their chefs. And they had this thing every year called Embassy Chefs Challenge, where
Okay.
you might not know this, but most of the embassies have chefs. They
Yeah.
all came together once a year and they would kind of battle it out for the title of
That's so fun.
best embassy chef.
Yeah.
And then during COVID, they couldn't do that, obviously.
Mhm.
They couldn't have that actual competition. So they came to us and said, would you guys be interested in doing something in that
Yeah.
world? We're not sure what it would be. So we made this little series.
That's so cool.
And at the time, it was called Embassy Chefs
Mhm.
Challenge. It's an exploration of how food is a variation of soft diplomacy
Right.
for ambassadors, and how they can sort of use the
Right.
culinary arts as a way to sort of make deals and
cool.
do what's best for their nations.
Yeah.
So the first season was great. We ended up winning an Emmy, which was really cool for it.
That's awesome.
And then we were asked to do another one. So we
Mhm.
just finished a new series called The Ambassador's Table.
Okay.
and we interviewed the ambassadors and the chefs for Ukraine, for China, and for Mexico.
Okay.
And that was really, really fun. And one of the best things for me that we were able to do is we were able to bring students in.
Yeah.
And they were able to be a part of the project.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a blast.
That's awesome.
And so those are going to come out in a couple months.
Great. Well, good luck with that too. Because
Thank you.
I'm sure it'll do great.
And it's definitely the reason I got into cooking.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I didn't know anything about cooking.
Yeah.
And then watching these unbelievable chefs do what they do. I remember our first season, Peru. This cordon bleu trained chef.
Wow.
Just amazing. Like, it's so inspiring to watch these people do what they do. And it inspired me to try to, make something better than macaroni and cheese.
I feel that every time I watch a cooking show, I'm like, I can do this.
Yeah.
And then you try, and you're
Right.
like, maybe not, but it'll take some time. Like any craft, right? It takes time.
Ottolenghi's my favorite right now.
Okay.
I bought all his books, and I'm really
awesome.
into Jerusalem and Simple. Those are really good
That's
cookbooks.
awesome.
Yeah, those are my shout outs.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Speaking on COVID, did COVID affect Stay Awake at all?
Big
I know
time.
it came-
Yeah.
it's
We've
2023. That's It's like right there.
how much time do you have, Grace?
I
We
know.
could get into this
You
for a
can
long
talk about
time.
it as much as you want.
But yeah, we were slated to go in 2020.
Oh wow.
We had all of our
Okay.
actors lined up.
Yeah.
And then in our case, there were television clauses because we had 2 actors that were a part of pretty big TV shows at the time.
Yes.
And they just couldn't. Usually, if you have an indie feature, TV shows are pretty gracious when when they've gone dark. That they'll just let their actors kind of.
Okay.
But technically, in a lot of these contracts, they sort of have the say whether or not an actor can go and be a part of another production.
Yeah.
And as you might imagine, there were so many health concerns surrounding COVID at the time that we're not the exception by any means. I think most television productions were a little bit more stringent.
Yeah.
So we had to wait. We had to wait a whole year. We got so lucky that none of our financing fell out.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
Now, I have a lot of friends who had incredible movies lined up that they just weren't able to make for that reason. The only reason we got our film made was Chrissy Metz, if I can be real. When you're starting, a lot of the times actors, it's really just on a handshake.
Yeah.
If an actor will participate in your movie, it's not like they sign a contract.
Okay. Yeah.
And you're offering them nothing usually, right? For a small indie film.
Right.
But Chrissy said she would do it.
Oh.
She said, "Hey, stick with, I'll stick with you. Just wait till I'm done with this show."
Yeah.
And she was true to her word. I mean, I
That's
literally owe that entire film to her.
That's wow.
Yeah.
That's very special, very unique. That's amazing. What have you seen kind of in the last few years change in the industry, and what are some of the challenges that you've kind of started to face or have been facing? Just anything there, kind of open-ended question.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all feeling it, right?
Yeah.
There's something happening. There's something amiss.
Yeah.
That's been going on for a while. I think today distribution is sort of broken. I think that's a pretty accepted sort of thought that even if you're able to make your movie, it's hard to monetize your movie.
Right.
And usually if you made an indie film, you'd go to Sundance or Cannes or Berlin or whatever, and the hope would be that you would sell that.
Yeah.
Even back in the day, that was always hard to do. But these days, it's become even more difficult, not only to sell it, but to sell it at a level where you can recoup your money and maybe even make your investors money.
Right.
So that's the part that's broken. A lot of these streamers have been really disruptive, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a more challenging way. They've sort of challenged that entire model.
Right.
And I think right now we're in that state of flux. It kind of reminds me of where music was back in the early aughts, where,
interesting.
Napster
Okay.
came and sort of disrupted the way CDs were sold at the time. I feel like we're seeing something very similar, where there was a model that people could rely on to get a return on their investment, and it's just not happening now.
Yeah.
The festival system of selling movies is still there. It's just I think that's the big challenge everyone's facing, is how do we find a new model, or how do we fix that one potentially?
And how do you feel about this whole AI business?
I'm feeling okay about it.
Yeah?
If I can be honest with you,
Yeah, for sure. We like all the perspectives. So
I
that's
mean,
why I asked.
Alexa can barely understand when I want to set a timer right now. So I feel like we're still
That's so true.
we're still a ways away from AI really, I think,
Like
taking over
the industry.
all creative.
Yeah.
I think there's some jobs that are more at risk right now than others. But I still think we have some time until AI can fully understand the emotion you need to tell a story.
That's I think what we're missing, like what people seem to be forgetting, is there's so much emotion behind a director or even behind a producer, to be honest. Like there's a lot of numbers and things on a piece of paper, but for me to actually creative direct or creative produce you, the word creative is kind of where we're, we still have that, human connection. So I feel like it's important.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point where producing is just as creative as directing.
Yeah.
I mean, some people don't realize this, but kind of on the hierarchy, producing kind of is the top of the hierarchy. They hire directors.
Right.
So at the end of the day, they control the budget.
And go to see the vision too,
But the budget controls everything, right? And you might have a great song you want in your movie,
right.
But if the producer can't afford it, then that's a creative decision that they're making.
Right.
So a lot of creativity there, for sure.
That's good advice too.
But real quick, back to the AI. I might be naive there. I mean, I have no idea, but I think I'm more optimistic. I see a lot of ways where AI can help.
That's where I'm at too.
And enhance and support, and it excites me.
Yeah.
Do I think one day it'll catch up and get to a place where it can sort of do the same things that writer directors do? Probably.
Yeah.
But I still think we have some time.
Yeah. I hope so.
Me too.
Hope so. And then just in terms of kind of the advice you give, any pieces of advice, like if you were to just sit in a room with your students and they're just asking for pieces of advice for a filmmaker, what are some that you've learned kind of along your journey?
Well, for the first part, I love teaching.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's awesome.
I think during COVID especially, as we all did during COVID, there was a lot of time for reflection. And filmmaking can feel so selfish sometimes to me, where I'm asking all of these people to sort of help me realize my voice and my creative vision. I literally wanted to do something that just felt more fulfilling. Yeah. And that it was not giving back, but that I felt like I was a part of a community and helping to make a contribution. That was all something that I felt I was missing. It was that connection. Gotcha. And I think this community and in teaching has really sort of filled that gap for me. Yeah. So, and then I try to answer all questions the students ask. Yeah. They ask all those kinds of questions. Yeah. And I think one of the nice things for me is that I'm actively making movies right now. Like I just started up a new one. Okay. So I have, I try to be pretty transparent about my process, the good, the bad, and the ugly, in hopes that that'll help prepare students in this kind of challenging market right now.
Any advice you can kind of give to the challenging market right now? As I know, it's like the industry feels ultra competitive right now. There's just a lot going on. Sometimes it does feel like every man for himself, when you're trying to find like a community or collaboration. So just any advice you can give there.
I mean, I've got a ton. I mean, a couple would be, I wouldn't fret too much. I think entertainment's always going to be there. People need entertainment. Yeah. People need artists and voices. They need people that can help look at the world and make sense of it in ways that might help them.
Yeah.
That and that's a big part of it, but also just I think art can really help in taking what's happening in the world and making sense of it. Yeah. I was just teaching a class, Survey of International Cinema. Oh, wow. And we were looking at two South Korean films, Burning and Parasite, which everyone's seen. Yep. But to look at how those two filmmakers explored class and socioeconomic strife, especially amongst young people in that country, I don't think it's difficult to sort of draw a correlation with some similar things that are happening worldwide. Those kinds of films help me make sense of it all. So I think we need that. So I guess that's my first thing. I don't think it's going anywhere. Yeah. We all need artists. We need escape, and we need people that can help us understand these issues better. Right. Also, I would say I would try to get a side hustle or some sort of gig that's not directly film related when you're jumping directly out of school. Because I think it takes a little bit of time to get yourself situated, especially if you want to be a writer, director, or a producer. Yeah. I would work at a production company or work for a management company or an agency or do something completely unrelated to film. But I think that's provided me a lot of stability. Yeah. So that I could say no to things that I don't want to do, and that's been really that's been empowering. Really just to hang in there.
Yeah.
This will, it'll
That's
get
real.
better. It really will. And this is an especially challenging time
Yeah.
to try to go out and find a job,
Yeah.
but it will get better.
Is there anything you're working on that you can tell us about, or
Yeah.
whatever's next project or anything?
Yeah, so I just finished a screenplay with my, I'm co-writing this with a screenwriting partner called Jezebel. And
Okay.
Jezebel is about a country group, basically, a duo, a brother-sister duo, Charlotte and Tyler.
Okay.
And they've spent years trying to make music
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of nowhere, Texas, and nobody cares.
Yeah.
And Charlotte is getting to a place where she's thinking of hanging it up and taking care of the ranch. And then one day, one of their songs, Jezebel, is found playing at this horrific scene of a murder. Songs playing on repeat.
Yeah.
Jezebel's scrawled in blood over the windshield. And because of that, they start to grow. People start to take notice. And this band gets a little bit of life in them. They get to start opening for people in Texas in the
Yeah.
red dirt scene. And then as they keep going, things happen.
Yeah.
And that's sort of Jezebel.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see. Okay. So just a little rapid fire. Is there a favorite film you've seen in the past year?
That's a tough one.
One that stuck out, maybe?
A new one or just any film?
Any.
Just because he's getting so much notoriety right now, and I'm so happy for him. But Sean Baker is so good. And I'm so glad he won the Palme d'Or. So glad he won Best Picture.
Yeah.
I think people think that he's this overnight success, but Sean Baker's been around for a really long time.
That's such a real thing for a lot of people in the industry.
So I like to point him out
Yeah.
because he's not by any means an overnight success.
Right.
I think, don't quote me, but I think this is like his 7th film, 6th or 7th movie. A lot of films that went nowhere initially.
Yeah.
Just studying him, I think, is a good case study on what it really takes to sort of get
Yeah.
into the film scene.
Yeah.
And then I love Lulu Wang. I'm just a big fan of her work.
Awesome.
The Farewell is one of my very favorite movies. Anybody I know, anybody who's been in one of my classes knows how much I love Lulu Wang. And I want to point out Charlotte Wells' After Sun is a film that was made 2 years ago that I think more people should see.
Awesome. And then do you have a dream actor you want to work with? Actor,
God.
actress?
You know what? I want to work with Owen Campbell again, and
Okay.
he was the younger brother in my short film Stay Awake,
Okay.
and he was in what was the film X, Ty West's film with Mia Goth. He was a part of that
Yes,
movie that did
yeah.
really well. I mean, he's been in a lot of great movies
Yeah.
since, but it'd be a dream to work with him again.
And then scripted or documentary, what's scarier?
Docs,
Okay.
far and away.
Okay.
To me, no contest. I think docs are so much harder in a lot of ways because
Yeah.
I mean it depends on your approach, right? If you do something that's more historical,
Right.
maybe you could write a script and it'd be more simple. But being a fly on the wall and doing something verite when you're
Yeah.
not really sure where the story's going,
Yeah.
I mean, and the editing part of that and the skill that it takes to find the story and the
Yeah.
material, hats off to people who do that
That's awesome.
constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what's one piece of advice you'd give your younger self, younger Jamie?
Enjoy life more.
Yeah.
Stop being so stressed.
Yeah.
And just realizing that what you think, maybe we can all relate to this, but
Yeah.
I remember 20 years ago, I made decisions based on where the landscape was.
Yeah.
And it's been humbling to see over the last 20 years how much everything's changed, right? The economy, our country.
Yeah.
So just, be loose, be fluid,
Yeah.
be willing to adapt and enjoy that instead of be frustrated by it.
Right.
I think is something that I'm learning.
Yeah, that's great advice. And then just last one, I know you kind of touched on it, getting into cooking lately, but is there anything that you like to do just outside of all of this that kind of gives you a little bit of peace?
It's silly. I love watching movies.
Yeah.
I just
That's my answer too, honestly.
yeah. I'm
So-
a big fan
Yeah.
of watching films
Yeah.
and television. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm rewatching The Wire right now for a new
That's
project
such
I'm
a good
about
one.
to write, and it's just been such a joy
Yeah.
to sit at night
Mhm.
and rewatch those seasons.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
That's awesome.
I know it's lame, but
No,
that's what I like to do.
I have that same answer, honestly,
Yeah.
because that is, I guess, what launched me into the career, but also what kind of takes me out of it sometimes is just like letting my head go to another space or another world or just another, universe of characters.
Well, and
So
it's nice
it
too
helps.
because really then your work is a joy.
Yeah.
Like I really do
Yeah.
genuinely enjoy what I do. Both filmmaking, watching films,
Yeah.
teaching about film.
Yeah.
I really love it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie, for coming on the podcast. And we can't wait to see what you do. And good luck with the next project coming up. And I'm sure if anyone has any questions, please, we'll drop all your information in the description as well.
Yeah.
Take a class.
Take a class.
Yeah, take a class. Oh,
Reach
do you
out.
want to drop what classes you teach or what class you teach
Sure,
so that they
sure.
know at least? I don't think we went
I
through
think
that.
next semester I'm teaching writing the short film
Okay.
and producing.
Awesome.
And then generally, I oftentimes will teach writing the feature. So
cool.
a lot of writing classes,
Yeah.
and then, I taught cross-cultural cinema one semester, which was a joy.
cool. That's
International
awesome.
cinema this semester.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I kind of skip around,
Yeah,
whatever's needed. But
That's no, it's important.
but thank you guys for having me. Is the other thing I wanted to say.
Absolutely.
It's really, really a pleasure. Thank you all very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was an honor and pleasure. Thank you. And if you would like to donate to the School of Communication, go to giving.american.edu. Otherwise, we will see you next time. And that's a wrap.